Hi, my name is Alex Miller, and I'm going to be talking about cocaine and cocaine policy. And I think it's important to mention that what cocaine is, this is just a compound from the coca plant, and it was first discovered by the West by Europeans when Spain went to go settle South America, and they saw the indigenous people were chewing it, and they saw it, and they noticed that it had an effect on them, and so that was when it was brought over, and the cocaine was extracted out of the coca plant. But looking at it in the U.S., purely in the U.S., there's a company called Park and Davis, which was it's a chemical and pharmaceutical company from Detroit, and in 1884 they began producing pharmaceutical level cocaine, and they had over 2,000 pounds of coca leaves, the leaf itself, and by the late 19th century and the early 20th century, they actually became the largest producer of pharmaceutical cocaine in the world. And the first legislation that affected the realm of cocaine in the US was the Food and Drug Act of 1906. And all that really did was require labeling. So for a company like Park and Davis, they had topical things. They had topical things that would help or that would numb it, but they also had traditional injections for cocaine, and those things just had to be labeled like, hey, they have cocaine in them. And the next thing that affected them was the Harrison Narcotics Act. And what that did was it was used to regulate and tax production of opiates and coca products. It was mainly targeted at opiates, but because they include things like coca products, they were also included in the taxing and the regulation. And so that was the first thing. That was the first major thing outside of labeling that affected them. And then the next major thing that affected them and that affects almost every risky behavior is the Controlled Substances Act of 1970, and that made cocaine a Schedule II drug, so not quite a Schedule One. Schedule II drugs are seen to have a high potential for abuse, but are also accepted by some, accepted to have some kind of medical use. And so, today, they're used for topical anesthetics and also to stop nosebleeds. And the data set I'm going to be looking at today comes from Monitoring the Future, and that started monitoring 12th graders starting in 1975 and monitoring 8th graders in 1991. This is the first data set. They're all going to be a little bit difficult to look at. They're a little difficult to see the numbers, but I got it all. So this compares the percentages of kids, 8th, 10th, and 12th graders who use cocaine or these other illicit drugs at least once in their lifetime. And so starting in 1991, 8th graders, 2.3% of 8th graders said they used it once in their lifetime, and that number dropped to 1.4 in 2018. For 12th graders, it was 7.8 in 1991. It dropped to 3.9. So a substantial drop to 3.9 in 2018. Moving on, this is if they used it once in that year. For 8th graders, it was 1.1%. That dropped to an eighth of a tenth, 0.8%. And for 12th graders, it was 3.5, and that dropped to 2.3. And then this is if they used it in a month, same sort of thing. If they used it in a month for 8th graders, it was 0.5%, and that dropped to 0.3. And for 12th graders, it was 1.4%, and that dropped to 0.5%. So by the end for this monthly report, they're both very equitable numbers. For 2018, 8th graders was 0.3%, and 12th graders was 0.5%, which is the closest it's been between those three data sets. And then this is looking at trends in availability. So starting in 1992, what this does is it ranks how 8th graders perceive how easy it is to get these illicit drugs. So 100% is super easy and 0 is virtually impossible. So in 1992, 8th graders valued at 25.7 was the availability level to get cocaine. And that same number in 2018 was 9.8. So that's a substantial drop between those 2 years. And that in 2018, it was they valued it was nearly impossible, the availability of getting cocaine. And if you compare that to this, what this is comparing is the measurement of harmfulness for 12th graders for 17 and 18-year-olds. And in 1975, only 5 years after the Controlled Substances Act, 73.1% viewed doing cocaine on a regular basis as harmful. Compare that to 2018, in this data set, the number is 75.2. So it's still very, those numbers are very, very close in nature. And the two data sets show sort of a disparity between people who are older and younger. The younger people see the eighth graders are seeing it as a little bit more harmful, and I guess the fact that they're a little bit more malleable to um, being told the dangers of it as compared to the 12th graders who are closer and closer to being adults. Uh, the translation has been a lot more volatile for people at a younger age than it has for these 12th graders who are closer to adulthood. So